At this time, I'd like to call to order the public hearing for the levy, 2014 levy for the Village of Midlothian. Roll call.
Trustee Gillis.
Here.
Trustee Kilday.
Here.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Moskell.
Here.
Trustee Chivoni.
Here.
Mayor Ryback.
Here. We have a quorum. I will open the, I'm sorry. We're opening the levy hearing right now. The CPI was presented to the board, was based at the CPI 1.5% increase for the levy for the 2014-15 tax year. And that's about all I have to say. And this is the standard levy that we have to pass every year. This is the only way the village can receive their property taxes is by approving the levy this evening. And if any of the trustees have comments, this is the time.
If I read it correctly, the abatement portion shows that we're not going to abate 3 of the bonds, which we have been doing for years. That total would be $1 million, give or take a few hundred, 10,000. So what you're asking us to do is approve a levy that includes an extra $1 million?
The levy includes all our bond indebtedness.
Right, but the abatement?
The abatement, yes, the abatement would include these 3 bonds because the 2013 bond has no revenue source to abate it. The Jawa bond has no revenue source tied to it to abate it, and when these were taken, and even the 2010 or 2010A has monies that said that they would go to it, but because of the past accounting practices in the village, it's very hard to find out if we have enough to be able to cover the $726,000 bond payment. And so I'm asking not to abate it at this point. We can abate bonds up until the beginning of April, so all through March. So as we're collecting the funds and they're segregated out, we'll keep track of them. Joe McDonald had been doing that all of last year and said that because we abated all the bonds last year, because the 2013 shouldn't have been abated at all, the restricted funds that you guys would see every month on, or when we had finance meetings and you would see all the restricted funds, that money is now being in those restricted funds. So we'll have a definite number when we're ready to do a change in the abatement. So this could still possibly be partially abated, totally abated, or not abated at all compared to how much money we have at that point. But the abatement can be changed all the way up until the beginning of April. We actually don't even have to pass the abatement ordinance this evening. We have till the end of the year to be able to pass this.
So then if we're sticking with the 1.5% increase in the levy, which is our statutory limit, why are we having this hearing?
It's typical practice.
A meeting?
No, normally you have a hearing. It's just, it's part of the protocol of passing the levy, even though we did not even though we didn't go over the CPI.
And according to Attorney Gleason, it had to be done by the second Tuesday of,
The ordinance has to be passed, yes.
although it doesn't, the levy doesn't have to be filed until the 30th of December.
The fourth two.
Well, right, 14th.
Correct.
Tell me, why are we forced? First of all, we weren't aware of this meeting until Friday. And if I could, I'd like to read a letter from Trustee Price. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my absence this evening. It is a rare occurrence that I've ever missed a village board meeting or committee meeting. However, at the November 21st, 2014 Finance Committee meeting, where all village trustees and village clerk were present, I made it abundantly clear that I would be unavailable for a meeting during the evening of December 8th, 2014. At the conclusion of the November 21st meeting, there was no specific date set for any subsequent meetings. At approximately 4:45 on Friday, December 5th, 2014, the board members received an email from Mayor Ryback indicating a special meeting was scheduled for the evening for December 8th at 7:30 p.m. I was stunned, and when I received this email, I responded via email to the mayor expressing both my shock and displeasure. The board approved last year's levy on December 11th, which is not the second Tuesday of December. So I am not sure why the board simply could not have approved the levy at the Wednesday, December 10th, 2014 board meeting along with the vote for the repeal of tax cap ordinance. If I were here to vote, I would be casting no vote to repeal the self-imposed property tax cap ordinance. And I have every confidence that this ordinance will not be repealed this evening. and I share the same concerns. We were there, we all unanimously agreed that if there was going to be a meeting about this, it would be December 9th, Tuesday. And that meeting would be about the repeal of the tax cap ordinance. So I guess I'm concerned as well as obviously Trustee Price is, but why are we pushing this and getting last minute information? That's what I can't figure out.
Well, we had already discussed the levy prior, and when I had to put it in the paper, it very specifically says you have to give you have to give no more than 7 days, no less than 14 days notice. And the only way we could get it in time was to get it in the paper on the Friday after Thanksgiving. Joe McDonald wrote up the notice that went in the newspaper, and instead of putting Tuesday the 9th, like I had asked him, he put Monday the 8th. And so to stay in not to be in violation of the ordinance that was in the newspaper, we had to have the meeting this evening.
So then you're saying last year when the board passed the levy at the December 11th meeting, we were in violation of the law?
I don't know, I didn't think we were.
No.
I'd have to look down. I don't know when the date fell on.
December 11th, it wasn't the second Tuesday, it was a Wednesday. Well, does anyone share my concern that we passed a tentative levy, a preliminary levy, that shows that all the bonds would be abated? Now we're getting today an abatement portion of the levy that shows that 3 of the bonds will not be abated. And I understand that supposedly we can abate it up until June or May or whatever the date is, but I'm not comfortable with not approving abating all of the bonds.
Well, the board has been informed about the non-abatement of the 3 bonds that I'm recommending not to be abated. At the last finance meeting,
We spoke of one bond that we agreed that did not have a specific revenue source and thought that
the
would be.
2013,
Yeah. That was
and we did not
$280,000.
abate the Jawa bond last year.
Correct.
So those 2 bonds, and then Attorney Gleason actually came into the finance meeting and said the 2010 had the same stipulation with the wording of the bond, from the bond issue. You could if you had the money to abate.
And we have a 3-cent gas tax and a
Correct.
$10.35 a month water surcharge that pays
Correct.
for that bond.
Yes,
So now we're asking the residents to pay out of their property taxes as well.
I don't have that money sitting in restricted funds. Had the village been receiving these funds in, they started it in 2010, collecting the $10.35 a month, plus the 3-cent gas tax. Had that money been continually put into restricted funds and not used in the general fund to cover expenses, you might have the money here tonight to abate. I am telling you, sitting here on December 8th, I don't have the money to abate that bond. And if I do abate it, then we are in violation of the bond ordinance. The bond ordinance specifically said, if you do not have the funds to pay the bond in full, you must put it on the levy. I'm just following the law and the contract that was signed, not by me. I did not take any of these bonds. I'm following how the bonds read. And both the 10,010A and the 2013, and even the JAWA, say that if you do not have the funds set aside in restricted funds, then they cannot be abated. I don't have the $785,000 bond payment for that bond set aside yet. I'll let you know as we approach in March, and let you know where we're sitting, and we can abate up to any portion of the money we have set up into the restricted funds for that bond.
I'm not here to grandstand, but if whether we may or may not have the money to pay the bond in restricted funds is not the property owner's fault.
I
We should not
understand that.
have to be asked to pay double for a bond that is, we have 2 revenue streams there to pay.
But we don't know if there's enough there.
We don't know.
Correct. Once I
May or
know,
may not.
right, and I don't feel comfortable with being in violation of the bond and possibly committing fraud by not being able to pay the bond payment.
So the finance committee meeting was November
November
21st, and that's when we talked about this. And now the second time we hear about this is 3 hours ago. That's wrong. If you knew that, or if you had any idea that was gonna happen, you should have told us about it. And then we could have double checked what, you know, the finance committee is just at a loss here because that's the first time we heard about the rationale for this. We talked about that at that time, and the response I think I had was that we had the revenue to do that. And nobody said anything until like 3 o'clock to say, hey, this is gonna happen. It wasn't in the tentative levy, it wasn't in anything. Nobody knew about this, nobody. Now all of a sudden, we're coming up and we're saying, okay, we don't have the money. I don't know, yes, no, whatever. I have no reason to say yes, I have no reason to say no, but we should have had the opportunity to investigate this, and if we knew this in any way, shape, or form before 4 hours ago, we should have known about it. This stuff about, it's on our desk when we're walking in. It's nuts.
Like I said, the abating portion of this levy does not have to be done this evening.
I know.
The levy needs to be passed this evening. That's why we're here, is to pass the levy. The abating can happen at another meeting this month.
It can, but why didn't we know about it ahead of time? Why do we have to be put in this position? Why do they have to look at us and like we're idiots back here, that we don't know anything what we're doing, when we've had 4 finance committee meetings to try to hash this out, and there's been an opportunity to talk about this stuff. If you had an inkling that this was gonna happen like this, then we should have known about it way ahead of time. You know, we can't, part of the board's job is to investigate and verify and be comfortable with what the proposal is. You can't be comfortable with a proposal that's given to you 4 hours before. And actually, I spent most of the afternoon trying to verify some of these things. I did learn some things about that. And, you know, part of this is when we're looking at the levy, you know, I would like to see the article from the Tribune. Usually that's posted that's with our levies that we had. Here's the tax notice. And you know, as far as if there is a bond ordinance, which we never saw, I don't think we ever saw when we passed it, I'd like a copy of that saying, hey, you know, here's the bond ordinance, here's what we agreed to, here's what we have to do. And I don't have any doubt, you know, reason to doubt anybody about this, but the bottom line is, this stuff is just not a good way to run a government. It's just a terrible way to run a government. And you know, we can't abate till, I don't know, March, April, yes we can, but you know, we don't have such little things like, you know, and it's not, the accounting system has been screwed up. We all know that. But we don't have, we don't know what we're doing. I mean, we really don't know what we're doing here. I mean, we're taking on, fortunately, Mr. McDonald, I think, has done a pretty nice job of helping us with some of, trying to clear a lot of these things up. And, you know, I believe that Mr. McDonald is a very competent person, and you know, if he tells us that there's a deficit of a certain amount, I think he's probably in the ballgame. Maybe he's off a little bit here or there, but I think it's somewhere in that ballgame. We had to try to fill that. We spent 4 meetings trying to come up with alternate ways besides a property tax of doing this. And, you know, now all of a sudden, you know, basically today we find out, well, that whole thing is down the drain, that it's not 1.5%, it's 27%. And I understand we can abate it, but it's just sort of, it's not the way to run government on something as serious as this matter.
Is the abatement portion, the ordinance abating certain portion of the 2014 tax levy, that is a supplement to the levy, correct?
Separate order.
It's a separate ordinance.
So since it's not on the agenda, we can't even discuss it tonight, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it would be true.
So we can't really do any abatement. Even the 500,000 that's here, that's abated, that's on there to abate, we can't abate that. And we do have to, but we do have to pass the tax levy, and the penalty for not, the reason we have to pass the tax levy early is because it's just the county, I couldn't find that in the county website, but I'm assuming
I can't figure it out either. Our district is approving theirs on the 18th, so doesn't every government body have to follow the same guideline?
No,
Municipalities do.
different codes for different entities.
Okay.
There's a park district code, there's a municipal code, there's a school code. There's codes for
Okay.
Can't hear what you're saying up there.
We
We can't hear you.
I said there's different codes for different governmental entities.
Thank you.
So in the current, and if we don't pass it tonight, then the levy is null and void, and we will never get any money for next year for property taxes, what you're telling us.
There's a potential for that, not necessarily, but there's a potential for that.
I mean, I don't want to be another town out east that could happen.
So you're telling us that we're not pushing this through tonight because we're raising the levy more than the statutory limit. And if we did that, it would require a 20-day publishing time, and that would put us at the 29th, and still have time to file. So you're saying that's not why we're here tonight?
You're asking me?
Well-
You're asking Mary.
Not understanding the question.
Because we've always passed the levy at the second board meeting of, or the first board meeting of December, which is the second Wednesday of the month. Why does it have to be done by the second Tuesday of the month now?
That's what the municipal code says.
So all these years that Midlothian has passed the levy on the second Wednesday of December, they've been in violation of the code of law.
I don't know. I don't know when that law went into effect. If it's changed, I don't know. I just know that I was informed by our lawyer that we had to pass it by the second Tuesday of this month.
And all you're asking for us to do tonight is pass a levy that has within our statutory limit of 1.5%.
Correct.
And we will address the abatement later
Yes.
this month.
Yes, at a later meeting
Because
this month.
it's not on the agenda, so we can't talk.
Correct.
You could talk about it, you can't pass it.
Pardon me?
You could talk about it, you can't pass it.
We can't do anything.
Do we have an idea how much is in the restricted funds that were covered in 2010 A bond?
No, Joe was looking into that to give me a definite figure and have it for me. He just didn't, and wasn't able to get it to me today, because I asked him that question.
Do we know, Mayor, what the amount of the sales taxes that are put aside for the restricted part of this?
The sales taxes all do cover the 3 bonds that were pledged to sales taxes, is what Joe McDonald has told me.
So if we don't, I think we withhold somewhere around $1.1 million with the sales taxes? I mean, it's in that ballgame. So if we have a bond issue of we have bond payments of 1.5, 1.6 million?
Approximately.
And so that leaves a shortfall of 500,000. So how do we come up? You just basically took the bond payments of the 2010, 2013, and they totaled $726,000. Is that right?
2010 is 720,000.
Oh, okay, 290,000, 280,000 is the
2013.
2013,
Right.
okay.
Roughly 550,000 of that should be covered by the water infrastructure fee that the residents are paying. $31 for.
That's just what, not 3 cent gas.
Correct.
That's also.
It's only the water piece.
Right. So,
So to Don's point, we should have enough from what we're withholding from sales tax to cover at least where they should be abated.
We also have to remember that any excess sales tax that we do get to the village, that is normally village operating funds. So if you use all your money to pay all the bonds, then you have no money to operate with.
So if we hold excess money, sales taxes, then we don't have, then we're actually shorting the general fund. So
Correct.
it appears right now, just off the top of my head, that we are holding excess sales taxes to cover for, to cover bonds, but, we didn't take that into account with the abatement, but, I guess it was never brought up to any of us, probably until this happened and the light went on, that, hey, where is that money Where's the water infrastructure money? Where is the gas tax? The gas tax money has never been, as I remember, it's never been in a restricted report. It's always been general. So that, you know, that money, the gas tax, has always been counted as a general fund item, you know, it's not a restricted fund. But the water infrastructure is substantial, we just always assumed it was in the water fund.
Right. At this time, I will open the floor to public comment. We ask that this is the levy hearing, that you restrict your comments at this portion of the meeting to levy only, and then we are going to have a special meeting right after this, so you can add other public comments at that point. If anybody would like to address the board, now would be your time. Yes.
Kathy Caveney, Keeler Avenue. As I understand it, our annual tax levy is limited to CPI or 1.5%, whichever is less. And at this point, 1.5% is lower than what the current CPI is. So when you vote on the levy during the next meeting, in the next 30 minutes or whatever that's going to be, the maximum levy you can approve is 1.5%.
Correct.
Okay.
That's what it is.
Okay, so these two bullet points on the second agenda have to do with repealing the ordinance and then approving the 2014 levy of 1.5%.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. I have to reiterate what Gary and Don said. I'm extremely, extremely ticked off at the fact that month after month, the board and the mayor comes to these meetings not prepared. Absolutely not prepared. I don't know how you can come to a meeting and not know how much money is in the restricted fund to pay certain bonds and how much cash we have on hand available to pay other things. I understand when you became mayor, the accounting was a bit of a nightmare and you had to unwrangle a big mess. But that was 2.5 years ago, okay? And I understand it takes a long time to undo all of that. But why on earth did you wait until October to let us know and to start having these hearings? It seems to me that whoever is handling the accounting now should have known we were in trouble way before October, and we should have been told way before October. We should have been having these meetings and these conversations 6 months ago, not 2 months ago. So it's absolutely ridiculous and uncalled for that this is even happening. And I'm strongly in favor of the board not voting to repeal that tax ordinance. I mean, on the 18th, the Park District wants to raise their levy 14%. The public is running out of money. We don't have 25% more to give to the village and 14% more to give to the Park District. So we have to start living within our means. If that means we have to cut some services, make cuts everywhere, then we have to do so. Cut salaries, have people take a day off or whatever the heck it's called. Because this is ridiculous and it's uncalled for.
Thank you. Yes.
I don't know if this is a proper question to ask now, I just need to educate myself. On these bonds that we took out, have we figured out where the spending went? Or what it was used for? And who took it out? And if so, who misappropriated funds or did not misappropriate funds?
It's not misappropriated for deficit spending. In other words, we didn't present a balanced budget, so in order to pay the bills, we took out that.
Okay, so before, we didn't balance the budget, so we just kept taking out bonds to pay stuff when we were short. Thank you.
Yes.
Jean Bartecki, 150th and Pulaski. Why would you put a legal notice in a Chicago Tribune and not into a local paper where the residents have access to it, like the Star or the Southtown, or the Messenger, what have you? Why the Tribune?
The only paper I could get it in time to be in the statutory of when I had to do it was the Tribune. The Southtown, the Star Southtown, the Messenger, nobody could have printed it in time to be able to have this hearing this evening. That's the only reason.
How many residents actually read the Tribune from Midlothian?
Anybody else? Yes.
I
I didn't understand. Don, you saying the $24 million we're in debt was just deficit spending?
Yes.
24 million in
Except for water,
The 2010 bond.
2010 bond was for infrastructure improvements, water and streets.
So Terry's 4 years in office, he overspent how many millions of dollars?
Well, a lot of this comes before Terry's.
Well, I'm sorry, you know more than I do. At the meeting I was at, the mayor said $4 million came from Borowski, the rest was from Terry.
No.
That's what I heard her say.
She
So
did
is
say
that
that.
wrong? So in 4 years, these are mind-boggling numbers to me, I would just like to know,
$24 million includes the.
what did we get
The
for
interest,
this?
it includes the interest and the infrastructure. You take basically $9 million out for infrastructure improvements. Now remember, 24 million is interest, including interest over 20, 30 years. What the actual numbers were of course, was less. It was about 17 million.
That doesn't make me feel a lot better, 17 million. I want to know what we got for.
17 million of that, 9 million of that was for water infrastructure improvements.
My street's falling apart, what did we get for 17 million?
You got water infrastructure improvements, and you got 3 million of it was for streets.
Is there anything we could see?
3 years,
Seriously.
3 years ago, you got $3 million street improvement program. You also had a lot of your water mains replaced. You also had new
Water meters.
you had all your water meters. That was included.
Yeah, you've done that twice within the past 10 years. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys just like to keep changing water meters all the time.
These water
It's just throwing money away.
These water meters are.
Well, yeah, but the other ones were the hot thing too, and then 3 years later you change them again, you know? And nobody can make up their mind.
It wasn't 3 years.
Well, 5 years then, Don, okay, but
It
wasn't 10, it wasn't 10, but okay, I might be wrong with the
They've
3.
been replacing meters as they went along. And I understand because I was one of the people that tried to.
Well, they did it twice at my house, I
I
know.
understand.
Okay,
And
yeah.
when they did the water infrastructure, I was one of the people that got them to cut back on some of that. But, you know, and unfortunately, some of that's the water tower that isn't there too. So just, you know, but I'm just telling you what, that's your
Is that the water
1035
tower
and
we
your
don't
3
have?
cent gas tax should pay for that. So basically, you're dealing with roughly $8-9 million of deficit spending over the Borowski era and the Stevens era. That's
And
about what
we
it
got
amounts to.
streets and water mains for this stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're satisfied with the spending that happened?
No, I mean, as far as the deficit spending?
No, I don't.
No, not the deficit spending.
I'm not getting anything where I understand anything that's happening here with what happened with this.
The $9 million was used to pay the bills. Over the last couple of years of the Borowski era and
2007.
and from 2007 on, basically, when Mayor Stevens got in, there was really 3 bond issues from Borowski. 2 that were taken, but there was one that was, as soon as Mayor Stevens was in office, basically there was a bond issue that had to be issued because then we weren't gonna pay the bills then too, right as soon as he got in. What we took, from our perspective, what the Stevens people did was they took the infrastructure and $3.5 million capital improvements loans.
So we just keep borrowing more money to pay off money that we didn't have before?
That's what happened in the present time, according to Treasurer McDonald, we have a $1.2 million deficit to $1.5 million deficit right now.
Annual spending.
Annual spending, right
And
now.
this is the whole board that did this, or one person, or what? I don't know. I'd like to know who did this to us?
The combination of, I suppose it's a combination of everybody, but the mayors have a lot of power with that. And, you know, you can't say the trustees were blameless either, I don't think.
Well, what do we do to make, I mean, everybody, you know, Terry said, let's raise this, we have to pay his stuff off, you know, but then he spent more. You know, the governor, last one, we're gonna raise 50% tax, we raised 67, and he spent more money than he spent the year before. I just don't trust you people aren't gonna do the exact same thing all over again. Keep spending where we don't have it.
Unnecessary.
It has to stop somewhere.
I think you have to know that the mayor, when she came in, has cut spending substantially. She made a lot of cuts in, especially personnel, payroll, and also, it's put the sort of a freeze on spending as much as she possibly can.
I have nothing
And
bad to
that's-
say
and
about
that's
her.
500
I
and that's
don't.
500 and that's 500, you know, basically at least $500,000. It still hasn't balanced the budget. We still, you
I
know.
mean, there's not a tax or a fee that hasn't been raised in
And
this town, and I mean,
That's right.
we're looking for more.
that's right.
Yeah.
You have, that's
Well, now
unfortunately.
everybody's telling us what we have to do, but 5 years ago, they could have told somebody what they couldn't do, and they should have spoke up then. Now you're 24 million in debt, and you're saying, oh, we gotta fix this? Why wasn't everybody up there saying something 5 years ago about this? Seriously, guys, you know, I know you all, every one of yous I know, and I've known for years, I like you all. This is ridiculous.
The referendum-
You don't do this at home, but with our money, you don't seem to care.
We do care. The
Well, it
referendum-
doesn't, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm not seeing it, Don.
Right.
I'm really not.
The referendum was supposed to fix it, it didn't fix it.
Because spending went up. after
Spending
that.
went up, yes, exactly.
It wasn't Mayor Ryback.
Substantially.
I like Mayor Wright, I got nothing
That's
bad to
good.
say about her, I'm not, and all of you people, I'm not, this is ridiculous.
You know, at home, if you don't have the money, you don't spend it.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I have another question. It's on the same thing, mostly to Mr. Colstead and Jerry. Is there a way, because I'm prior law enforcement, and I don't, when it comes into other things and other people, when they misappropriate money in funds and things aren't accounted for a certain way, especially when I was in the military, people went to jail.
Yeah.
And people got sued, people got, you know, people were held accountable. Now, you keep saying Morawski and Stevens, how come we're not going after Morawski and Stevens and take some of their money?
What's the definition of misappropriate?
Spending money that we don't have.
Stolen. Misappropriation is stolen.
Right.
It's not, you're not talking about,
But how do you know if you don't investigate it? At least investigate it. Right now, we're saying, I believe Morawski and Mr. Stevens because we know them. We believe that, you believe that they did it, but we don't know that. And I feel that some kind of board or committee should be put together and gone after the people who cause these problems. You know, I grew up here, this town ain't the same anymore. I came home from the Army after 20 years almost, and this town has changed. Now, some of the people that are still here are very loving and caring and help each other. I mean, I've known Mr. Nealon since since I was in kindergarten. But there's other parts of this town that are failing. We're failing because we're lying to each other and we're playing games. Let's go after the people that did wrong. Because if it was a normal person, we would do it.
I appreciate that, Brett. And we have been looking into the bonds, trying to figure out exactly where all the monies were spent over the years. It just takes an incredible amount of time, as you
Right, I
can
understand.
imagine. But we have not given up. We want answers also up here.
I'm just saying, you have very intelligent people on the board. Mr. Colston, you know, I trust what he says totally. You know?
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else like to?
Just a question, have you guys come anywhere close to seeing what's coming in? Are we already on a downward spiral? It doesn't matter how much you raise in taxes, what comes in, we're wishing into the future, hoping that we get businesses in here. Is it even salvageable anymore?
I believe it is totally salvageable, and actually that's why I had originally asked for a one-time tax increase of 33%, was just to get everything on an even plane. Like I said, we've worked very hard for this past year and a half since I became mayor to make drastic cuts up here. We've become more efficient, we're providing better and more quality services. We are making headway, and the problem is when you're always running around trying to chase money, it makes the other part of trying to sell the village and try to get these developments in here, it limits the time that we have spending on those kind of, drives that we have. I'd rather spend my time trying to bring in new businesses. I mean, Burcott's is going to be a huge shot in the arm of the village. And I do have a developer who's working on the Cicero Avenue project. We have a developer who's working over on the Kedzie project. projects take a little bit of time, but we have filled quite a few of the empty storefronts in the community, and things are starting to go in the right direction.
So if that does, can we ever expect to see a 1.5 or whatever it is percent to go back the other way, to take that levy off?
I would
the
have
boards?
no issue with doing that at all. If I could do it, I would gladly
Because-
do it.
Call me cynical, I've never seen a tax go away.
Yeah, I know. Unfortunately, I don't think any of us have, but it can be done, and you can approve the levy without having an increase at all. So, yes, I'd like to get the village to that point where we don't have to ask for an increase, that we are living within our means. Thank you. Yes?
Sharon, how could you have the nerve to ask us for a 33% increase when you knew that the Park District was going to ask us for almost 15% on top of that?
I didn't know what the Park District was asking for at that point.
I don't know how you could have not known.
Sharon, have you given the finance committee a budget yet? Because as of the last finance meeting that I had attended, they were still working without a budget. Have you been able to provide them that yet so that they actually know what they're dealing with?
Joe and Ryan Command, the new accounting person here, are working on getting all the accounts reconciled. We're right now in the middle of the audit, so that has been delayed a little bit, but they are working diligently to get that done, so we can go forward and know where we're spending money month after month. And we will be getting regular treasurer's reports from the new accounting, from the new accountant up here, because he is here on a daily basis, so he will be providing better reports for the finance committee. Is there anyone else on the levy? Yes.
Should people know this, but aren't you the finance director of the Park District?
Yes, I am.
Well, you should know what's going on with their finances.
We hadn't started working on the levy over there yet when I asked for the increase here.
Then how
Not
did
quite
you-
what you said before.
I'm sorry, what?
That's not quite what you said a few moments ago.
We hadn't started the levy over there. So I did not know what we were gonna be asking for over there.
I mean, I just feel there's a conflict of interest in lots of ways here in this town. Lots of ways.
Okay. Anybody else on the levy here? Yes?
Yeah, I was at the last finance meeting when I heard the lawyer tell everybody on the finance committee that the 2010 levy had the same wording as the 2013, and that the levy said you had to put them bonds on the levy. I heard
Unless
him,
we
I
had-
was all the way across the room when I heard him.
Unless we had sources of revenue to pay for it.
Do you have cash on hand to pay it?
We didn't know we did at that time, but we thought we did.
But I
The response-
found
the
out
response
later that
wasn't-
you had 2010, you started collecting the money. What did you do with that money? You spent 17 million, plus you collected money to make up and pay that 17 million, but you don't have that money anymore. So that's 3 years you collected that $10. What Ellen say, that's $500,000 a year? That's 1.5 million.
It is.
All right. So when you guys signed the bonds, now 4 of you were there when these bonds were signed,
And we looked at,
and you didn't realize that you were signing to say they would go on the levy?
no, sir, because we didn't see those.
Okay, so
We
you
didn't see
you
those
voted in the
documents.
bonds but
we
didn't
saw-
realize.
we
But
saw-
now you're calling the lawyer a liar.
I'm not calling the lawyer a liar. All I'm saying is that
But
the response at that time
I
was.
heard a lot of things up here, it don't have to go on the levy. I heard the lawyer at the last meeting tell you the wording on that levy,
The
on
wording
the
on
bond.
the levy said unless you had the dedicated revenue sources to pay for it, then you would have to levy it. That's what the lawyer said. We thought we had the dedicated revenue to do that, the gas tax and the water infrastructure. Now we find out 4 hours before, we don't have that money to do that.
Well, this
Now, I
is 3
understand-
years ago, 2010.
No,
That's
sir.
when you started collecting the money,
And we had that.
right? You had the money going in 2010.
And to the best of my knowledge.
So
we
you
had-
spent the money.
No, sir. To the best of my knowledge, we had that dedicated revenue. I don't believe that problem happened in 2010, 2011, 2012.
When you collected money, did you pay for bonds in them years?
Pardon me, sir?
Did you pay this bond? The 2010 bond?
Yes.
Did you make that
We
payment?
paid all the bonds. No problem.
When did that bond start taking payments?
I'm sorry.
When did you have to make the
2011.
first payment on the
2011.
2010 bond?
2011.
How much?
2012, 2013, 2014.
Oh, you put it off.
No, sir.
Put it off.
No, sir.
So you guys spent money
No, sir.
along
Not
with
from-
the
not from
$17
water-
million.
Not from the water fund. The water fund's
I'm with the
restricted.
guy down here, investigated.
The water fund is restricted.
And you had accounts that showed it, huh?
With water fund is restricted money. We can't spend that for the general fund.
Where did it
Nobody-
go?
Nobody, you have to tell me.
Oh, no,
Because-
I'm not a trustee.
You know what?
I'm not a trustee.
And I'm not a.
No, I know what a trustee does.
And I'm not a bishop either. I know what I'm told, that that money, we were told, was in the restricted fund for the water fund, period. You wanna see the treasurer's report? You can look at 3 years of treasurer's reports and tell us that that money is in the water fund for restricted, just to pay the bonds, and it was put away in the budget. Everything, every bit of document we had. I believe it, honestly, it was. I don't think this problem happened in those 3 years. I think it might have happened in the final year, when everything went bluey. I think that very well could happen. I don't know. We don't know. I mean, I think the bottom line is
That's what I hear a lot, we don't know.
the last year, we didn't know what happened. I think it's gonna take, and your mayor just told you that it's gonna take time to unravel it. But I can tell you that every report we got shows that that money was in a restricted fund to pay the bonds. And it's in the budget, and it was in the appropriations to pay those bonds. Every document we saw. Now, unless you have another, and the auditor signed off on those documents, unless you have another way of figuring that out, you let me know, because
You're asking me to go through your finances?
I'm
I
asking
will
you to
if you want me to.
I'm asking you to ask the auditor why they didn't make us aware then.
All I know
that
is for
that money-
years I ran money for the union. And we had trustees. We called them the same thing that you call somebody who wants to sign off for somebody's loan, you know? That's an idiot with a pen in his hand.
Right. Guess what? We spent a lot of time as idiots trying to make this work for the village.
Yeah, you can't answer his, where $17 million went, and you can't tell me where the,
I can tell you, I
half
can
a
know where the
million.
17 million went. I know, 9 million, I just told you, 9 million was for the infrastructure, about 8.5 million went for deficit spending. That's not hard to figure that out. We didn't have the money to pay the bills, and we let the bonds. There's a deficit, there's still a $1.2 million deficit here, roughly. Who knows exactly, but I mean, the bottom line is there's a deficit. If you don't have the money to pay bills, then you do, and you know, people have credit cards. We had a big credit card, unfortunately. That's the bottom line.
Any other further comments from the public on the hearing?
Can I just ask for clarification? Don, you just mentioned to Mr. Ryback that when we took out the 2010 bond and then the village started charging $10 on the water bill and the 3-cent gas tax.
Right.
Was that $10 water bill fee and the 3-cent gas tax supposed to go into a
Yes.
restricted fund?
No, the 3-cent gas tax was not restricted.
Okay,
The
but
1035,
the
the
10
1035 was,
The
but.
$10 was a restricted
Yes,
fund, and that
that's
was
right.
supposed to go into restricted
That
fund.
is right.
And all the budget documents and financial statements that the board received
Right.
showed that that money was there.
And the audit.
But are you telling us that the money's not there?
The mayor's told us right now that she believes that that money has not been put away any restricted accounts.
Right.
That's the biggest
Well,
problem.
then, if that's the case, then I agree with Brett and,
Who was
For this year.
responsible
yeah,
for
because
putting that away?
For this
if,
year.
then there was some kind of theft or fraud, because if the money was supposed to be allocated, and you were given financial statements that said the money in fact was allocated, and if we've got an auditor that signed off on those statements, he should have also checked the checkbook statement to verify that the checkbook statement matched the financial statement, and if they don't, then there really is cause for an investigation.
Well, the money went to pay bills. We believe that.
Somebody
Who
else.
authorized it?
Somebody else. Well, if they could get
You guys should come sit over here to see what you look like. I'm not, you should sit here to see how silly you look right now. You really should. If you don't know, just say you don't know, but don't just start
For
making stuff up.
2013, I don't know exactly where everything does. We asked the
Who should we ask?
well, I don't know. I asked the auditor, I said, well, how come we don't have enough money for the water tower? You know what his response was? I don't know.
Fire up.
Well,
I
Fire
don't
that up there and get somebody
And
else.
this is
No,
how
we
we
can't-
get another $8 million.
Because he's trying to track back things that he can't answer sometimes.
But he signed off on the financial audit, Don, he should know. Your
Well,
auditor
he
should
didn't
never
have
tell
to-
you I don't
He didn't
know.
have to tell us that. exactly.
Well, the auditor should know, he
Well, his
audited
signature's
the
on it, so we blame
statements.
him.
He should know where the money is.
No, he didn't have to sign off on that part of the audit.
Who's responsible for this money?
who's the-
Who's
yeah, who's
responsible
down
for
with
putting this money where it's supposed to go?
The accountant of the village should have been putting it aside.
Well, then he should go to jail.
Who's that?
We don't know.
Well, the problem is that we elected you to look after our money. And if it was your business, you would have these answers. I guarantee you know where every penny goes in your business. So you should we elected you to take that same attention and put it towards the village and our money.
And I do.
What?
I do. I spend a lot of time on this stuff, believe me, a lot. I'm working on my time, a lot of times for this. I'm not fooling around, sitting here just, looking at these financial reports. None of us are on the finance committee. The bottom line is we have to rely on people who tell us what there is. The treasurer tells us reports, the accounting department tells us reports, the auditor tells us reports. I don't do those reports. I don't do them. None of us do. We look at the treasurer's report, we look at all the figures we get, and we have to rely on their
Do you ask
expertise.
questions though, Don?
Yes.
Do you ask, well then, when it's wrong, why don't you make them fix it?
We've asked this, but there is no answer because the accounting was so botched up, and we don't have the person that was the treasurer at that time, we don't have her around to ask what happened. We don't. We don't have the mayor, we don't have the treasurer.
Subpoena her, go take it to court, subpoena her and ask her. And let her defraud herself.
You have to be able to go back to a time when this was right. And you should be able to go from there to find the mistakes.
The mayor's been.
I think not only should we vote on the levy, we should decide on a committee to investigate this situation. And if we don't, we're fooling ourselves and we're throwing our money away.
Okay. Are there any further questions or comments for the levy? Yeah.
This levy coming up, it will increase our taxes by how much?
1.5%.
And that includes the park district, which just
No,
got.
Oh, no.
No. This is only for the portion for the village of Midlothian on your tax bill. It'll go up 1.5%.
Why do you need that much? Do you need all of the 1.5%?
It actually comes to a $50,000 increase village-wide, is all we're gonna get new money this year.
I don't think you deserve it.
Yes.
Sharon, I have another question. How come we are paying for library supplies and things like that out of the village when the library has its own taxing?
We don't pay for the village's, or the library stuff.
According to one of the papers that I saw, it has money listed for supplies for the library.
They're on our levy because the library levies through the village.
But
But they
why?
get their own money.
Why are they on there? They are their own taxing.
They're
They are on a separate tax on
They
our
are a separate
property
tax on your tax, you're correct, on your property tax, but they only can I think they can only file through the village. Because they're not like a library, I don't know, because you're not a library district, that's why you have to do it through the village route?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's why I thought.
We would have to be our own public library.
So it's got to
Our own
stay,
district is separate from the village.
that's why. And they did not ask for an increase this year at all.
Well, I just wondered why they were on there because I knew they were paid separate taxes.
Yeah, no, they are paid separate taxes, but they're listed on my levy for county purposes. Yes.
What is the other 33% increase that people are throwing that number around?
That was what I originally asked for a few months ago when we first started talking about what we would need to go forward. And we had 2 public hearings talking about, you know, because it would be breaking an ordinance and having to over-raise our taxes. And the board is actually going to vote on that at the special meeting, but it was agreed that I would put together, I'd have our accountant put together the levy for this evening at the 1.5% increase, that's all.
So then this 33% is a totally dead issue?
None of them vote on it.
They're gonna vote on it after.
Oh, you're gonna vote on it later?
It depends if the board repeals the ordinance. If they choose to repeal the ordinance, then we could go to the 33%.
And when are
And
they gonna vote on that?
later at the next meeting.
Oh,
Once we close this one, we're gonna open up another
Tonight.
meeting,
oh, another one,
okay?
okay.
I got a question, Sharon.
Sounds like something-
Yes.
We heard Gary and Don. How about the other guys? What do you guys feel? Jerry, Vince, Alan? You guys been up there for a while now. What do you think about all the missing money?
Well, I believe that we were told things like Dan said in 2013 when our public works superintendent was getting ready to retire. He asked, we assumed the water bond money was there. We assumed we had the funds for the town. It was a shock to find out that the money was not there. I assumed at that point the money was used in the general fund. And I'm pretty sure I'm correct. And that was about 6 months ago. Further than that, when we get reports, we rely on the finance committee, which I'm not a part of, the auditing that's done by our auditing department. We rely on that information. There's no way that we can accept everything that comes through here. That's why we have subcommittees and committees within our committees.
So, and Don, did you know 6 months ago that the money wasn't there?
There probably, I think it was a little bit before that, actually. We had for the water tower, and I think you were talking about Mr. Hanson, who had come in and asked about if there was money for the water tower, and he was told no, right?
Yes.
And he came out with a red face because he had carefully put that money aside in his own mind that he had the money to do that.
Yes.
And when the board bought, the village bought the Chrysler property with water money, they asked straight out, is there enough money to do this and to build a water tower? And the answer from our treasurer and our village manager was, yes, don't worry about it. We didn't, so we just said, okay, fine, that's fine, no problem.